Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second shelf. After a little pause, because I needed to recuperate after all the stress, watching the election that sort of happened and never ended. I am back today on this Sunday with another video, and I thought a good way to reintroduce my videos is to make a complete fool of myself and try to predict the Booker Prize, which will be announced next week on the 19th, next Thursday. And if you're following my channel, you know I'm notoriously bad at predicting. So, hence, making a fool of myself. But I thought I'll give it a try anyway. As you undoubtedly know, there are 6 books on the shortlist. You will find links to all the 6 books, the Goodreads page of all 6 books down below. And I read all 6 of them with a little caveat in the sense that one book I DNF'd, which means that I only skim read the second half. So I didn't rate it on Goodreads, but I think I know enough of the book to be able to rate it for this prediction video. It's a little bit like the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we will start with the ugly. The 2 worst books I find on the shortlist, and I cannot express enough my complete consternation that they made the shortlist at all, and even the long list for that matter. But anyway, so I start with the book that I DNF'd or skim read the second half, and that is Real Life by Brandon Taylor. It's a debut novel, so I think the writer has potential, but this one definitely wasn't for me. It bored me. The writing style was just, somebody showing me that even either he did an MFA program or he incorporated everything that you should learn in an MFA program. No. Overwrought, overwritten. The story, though, sounded interesting. It's about a black gay man from Alabama, a student in on a Midwestern university, and the experience of being black in a white world. So that is interesting. I'm all in for that. I want to read about that. But the main character, I forgot his name even, I think Wallace, he just didn't come alive in any real way for me. And I think that's partly has to do with the writing style, because the writing style really irked the crap out of me. But also the character, I just couldn't see it. So after about 40% or so, I bailed on the book, as Sean the Book Maniac would say, and I skim read the last half. And no, a lot of people obviously liked it. They see something in this book that I didn't or couldn't. But for me, it was the only book of the shortlist that I just couldn't finish. The next book in the good, bad, ugly category is one of the worst books I've ever read. And I really don't understand how it made even the long list. And that is Tsitsi Dangaremba's book, This Mournable Body, which is the 3rd book in a series, a nervous condition. I read the first one, didn't like it, didn't read the second one. And then I buddy read this one, I think a year ago, with Sean the Book Maniac. And we suffered through the end, and it was just horrible. It's set in Zimbabwe, and the main character, a young woman, doesn't really know what to do with her life. She's sort of drifting, then gets a job as a biology teacher, but that sort of doesn't really work out. And from the outset, just like with Brandon Taylor's book, that sounds interesting. But the book is badly written. It doesn't have any character development or character arc. It's just as if the author thought of all the bad things that could happen to a young woman not knowing what to do with her life in present-day Zimbabwe, and then she threw it all in. Doesn't matter whether it made sense or whether it connected or whether it showed something about a development. Yeah, it was just really, really bad. But again, obviously, some people thought it was a good book, not least the judges of the Booker Prize, because they put it on the shortlist. And if I look at Goodreads, there are definitely people who, loved it more than I did. But in my defense, I would say even Eric Carl Anderson, who is such a kind person that he always sees or tries to see the good in a book, didn't like it and gave it 2 stars. So I feel vindicated, and if this book wins, I don't know, I will probably pop open a bottle of champagne. And the third book in the bottom half of the list, at least for me, is another debut novel, even though the author did publish a collection of short stories before, and that is Diane Cook, The New Wilderness. It's another American author on the list. And again, like with other books I previously talked about, this book had an interesting premise. It's a dystopian novel set in the future where the majority of the world is so polluted that people can literally hardly breathe. So climate change, it's very topical. Interesting, sounds interesting. The main story then revolves around Bea and her 5-year-old daughter Agnes and Bea's partner, who live in the city, and Agnes really suffers from the pollution. She has asthma, it's clear that if she lives for a little longer in this polluted environment, she will die. So the family signs up for a project which sounded to me a little bit like Expedition Robinson, if you remember that reality show. So there are 20 people picked to live in the new wilderness, the wilderness state, which is, has clear air, clear water. How that exactly is possible is not explained, but okay, we'll go for it. They have to live on the land without much, equipment. They are not allowed to bring any real equipment. They have to get rid of their waste, and they are also surveyed by state troopers, so to speak, from the outside world, who survey whether this group of people actually does what they are supposed to do. So the beginning of the book was kind of interesting, despite the fact, that some things were not explained why the circumstances were the way they were, and the center of the story focuses around the relationship between Agnes and Bea, so mother-daughter relationship. But in the second half of the book, the story kind of withered away, started to make less and less and less sense. And I don't want to give you any spoilers, but what happened in the relationship between those quote unquote state troopers and this group of people, and what happened in the outside world, and some of the decisions that the mother then makes. It just felt in the second half that the author didn't know anymore what to do with the story. And so it was, for me, not a successful read at all, unfortunately. So there are 3 books left that I thought were good, not all equally good, but good books. And the first one, which I liked the least of the 3, is another debut novel, and that is Shogibane by Douglas Stewart. Douglas Stewart is a Scottish author, and the book is set in Scotland and is a coming-of-age story of the main character, Hugh, or Shogibane. In the 1980s, in an impoverished Glasgow, his mother Agnes tries to keep up appearances by, looking good, at least. She has the relationship. Her husband is a taxi driver, on and off. He's gone and then he comes back. But the central focus is the coming of age story of Shogibane and his discovery of his sexuality. I think it's a good book. It was certainly well written. It just is, a couple of things just didn't work for me as well as they did for other people, because there are a lot of people out there who really love the book, and I can understand that. One of the things that didn't really work for me was the structure. So the book opens and we see Shogibane when he is already a young adult for the first couple of chapters. And then we go back to his childhood when he is, really a young boy. We see the family relations and what happens. And because I think it's always difficult when you start a book and giving the reader already to know how the end will look like, and then still make the pathway to that present interesting. And for me, it didn't work. It just didn't interest me enough what happens in the childhood in order to keep me engaged, even though I already knew where Shogibane would end up. That might also be because I didn't find the character that interesting, but that is a really very subjective, personal thing. But I think for me, mainly, it just bored me a little. This whole backstory that we then get, which is the majority of the book, it just didn't engage me enough to feel that it was really, really good. But again, it's certainly not a bad book. And if you don't have this pet peeve that I have, you will most certainly enjoy it much more than I did. My second favorite book of the shortlist is another debut novel of an Indian-American author, Avni Doshi, who was born in 1982 in New Jersey to Indian immigrants. And the book, Burnt Sugar, is set in India, in present-day India. And it explores, again, a mother-daughter relationship. Antara, the daughter in present-day India, sees that her mother, Tara, slowly loses memory. So she shows signs of dementia. And the relationship between mother and daughter is not good. But still, the daughter feels that she has to care for her mother, even though she doesn't really like her. She might love her, but she doesn't really like her. And the second storyline in the book is the backstory of Tara's childhood with Antara, and also the mother's childhood, but also Antara's childhood. We learn that Tara was quite a wild girl, the mother, when she was young. And she went to live in an ashram with her daughter. So we get a lot of the relationship between those two and what happened and why the relationship now in the present is bad. And I thought it was, for a debut novel, it was really, really good. And if I say for a debut novel, I don't mean to be condescending, but a writer should develop. So I hope that Avni Doshi's next book will be even better. The only thing that I liked the writing, I liked the relationship, the characters were well drawn, the story was interesting. Why the book didn't end up as my first choice was the ending. Which I can't talk about really because it would be a spoiler, but I felt it was a kind of a little bit Hollywood cheesy, forced wrap up. I didn't like that. But for the rest of the book, I thought it was really good, and for me, it is certainly a strong contender for the prize. And the sixth and final book, and obviously my top book, there's only one left, is Mansa Mengistu's The Shadow King. Mansa Mengistu was born in Ethiopia in 1974, and the family fled during the civil war, first to Kenya, and then Mansa Mengistu studied in the US, so she is now considered an American Ethiopian author. The Shadow King is the second book in a loose sort of duology about Ethiopia. I haven't read the first book, but this one really grabbed me, and I thought it was very, very good. So it's historical fiction, if you will. It's set during the Second World War, and the historical events that are central to the book is Mussolini's Italian army trying to recapture Ethiopia. The main character, or one of the main characters, is Hirut, who has recently lost her parents. She's orphaned, and then she works as a maid for an important family. And then the war starts, and we get multiple perspectives, also from the Italian side, a photographer who is embedded, as we would now call it, in the Italian army, and is supposed to document and photograph the events, the glorious events of the Italian army. So we get various points of views, but the main gist is the role of women, the fictionalized retelling, if you will, of the role of the women in the Ethiopian army, the women warriors. It's not an easygoing read that comes from the structure, because it's not told in a straightforward manner, but I thought the characters were wonderful. The various perspectives really gave depth to the book, and the story of this woman, Hirut in particular, but also other women, sort of balanced against the story of the photographer, who starts to question what he is doing and the morality of it all. I thought it was fabulous. It had a little bit of, I wouldn't call it magical realism, but sort of mythical lore in it, which I normally don't like, but for me it worked. It definitely worked in this book. So this one, for me, if I had to make a prediction, and if the judges would listen to me, which they don't, I would say The Shadow King should win the Booker Prize. I wouldn't mind if Burnt Sugar won, and I certainly wouldn't mind, even though I didn't personally think it was that good, if Shogibane would win. For the simple reason that Sean the Book Maniac promised, because he loved the book very much, and he promised if Shogibane wins the Booker Prize, he will read the whole long list next year. So I just want to see that and gloat. So for that reason alone, it would be fabulous if Shogibane won. Anyway, this is my Booker Prize prediction video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you follow the Booker Prize, let me know down in the comments which book you expect to win, or which book you would want to win. And I'll see you all soon in the next one.